Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of September 20th, 2020.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next two items, public hearing on the speed limit, we're going to table, and I guess approve it, we're going to table that also because of an advertising issue. Okay, so next is the conditional use hearing on Tiverton Hill Cemetery.
And we have some residents here if we need them.
Great. Burial plot rather than cemetery, I would.
Okay, fair.
Good.
You want to, yeah, before we start the hearing, do you want to come and sit in front now? I assume that these
Yeah.
folks
Would
from
that be
Camp Hill.
helpful for you? To ask them to come to the
And we want to capture their needs now.
No, let me just introduce them. Ready, Nancy? Okay, so this is a conditional use hearing on the application of Camp Hill Village, Kimberton Hills, for a property located at 1601 Pewtown Road, identified as tax parcel number 2551, consisting of 332 acres, and a portion of 25-5-1.1, consisting of 10 acres. The properties are located in the R2 zoning district and improved with an agricultural village community. A portion of the property proposed for the cemetery use consists of 20.7 acres adjacent to Camp Hill Drive. The applicants request conditional use approval to permit the cemetery pursuant to section 390-28B4 of the West Vincent Township zoning ordinance. I have some exhibits that I'm just going to mark for the record. Exhibit T1 is a copy of the application. Exhibit T2 is the proof of publication of the public notice in the Daily Local News. Exhibit T3 are the individual notices sent to property owners. Exhibit T4 is the correspondence dated August 30th from Felicity Jeans, is that how you pronounce your name? Confirming the date of the hearing for tonight. Exhibit T5 is a September 1st, 2021 LTL Consultants Review Letter on the application. Exhibit T6 is a conditional use decision dated April 14th, 2003, related to the property for the agricultural village community. Exhibit T7 is the agricultural village community master plan. Exhibit T8 is an aerial of the properties that are the subject of the application. And Exhibit T9 is a zoning ordinance by reference. Before we give the floor to the applicants, I would request if anyone would like to request party status to the application, then this would be the time to do that. Party status is reserved for individuals that have a particular relationship to the property, such as owning land in the direct vicinity or adjacent to the applicant's property. You don't have to be a party to ask questions or make statements to the Board of Supervisors during the hearing. It would give you an opportunity to receive a decision at the end of the hearing, though. With that, would anyone like to request party status to this application? So let's, the record.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, just state your name and address for the record.
Wheeler Raymond, 1453 Pewtown Road.
And you own property directly adjacent to or in the vicinity?
Yeah, we're not exactly sure where they know me. We're not exactly sure where this cemetery is going to be. And we own property around that area, yes.
We'll happily share with you.
Okay, and so
We'll happily share with you, Wheeler.
Thank you.
do you have any objection to Mr.
None at all.
Wheeler Almond being a party to the application?
None at all.
Okay.
Good neighbour, I would
Anyone else? So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicants to describe the use and proceed. And before you do, why don't you just, if you plan on both speaking, then why don't you both just be sworn in, if that's okay? Or whoever.
Whichever way, what do I need to do?
Just stand up and raise your right
Yeah.
hand.
In order for us to take your testimony as evidence, you need to be sworn in by the court reporter.
Of course, even though I'm left-handed, it's still my right hand.
That's a good question.
One closest to your heart. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I hope so, yes I do.
Thank you.
Would you spell your name?
SlightyJeans.
Ms. Jeans, if you care to proceed and explain the use that you're proposing.
Wonderful, thank you. We are proposing a burial site in Camp Hill Village, Kimberton Hills, and it will be just behind Rose Hall, which is our community centre, so a long way from our borders there, and from any water ways. And this is particularly at the request of some of the older founders of our community, who have cared for the land for many years, and one of them being 93 years old and is forward planning. And so we're wanting a burial plot for people to be placed in the earth naturally, with no chemicals, in the manner of the Quaker burial plots, and limited just to people within our community, so it won't be commercially open to other people, just for those who have lived their lives in Campbell Village and within those.
Can you just explain Camp Hill Village, Kimberton Hills, again, just for the record? So that
Camp Hill Village, Kimberton Hills is an intentional community, life-sharing of people with and without disabilities and various special needs. We care for the land and the people, and are in service to the world through our work, the work that we do there. Enough of an explanation for you?
If you could, I have a copy of the master plan, I think,
Yes.
and this was an exhibit that I referenced. We just want to make sure we understand the location.
I see it.
Okay,
So
there's
where
a
those-
square here, it looks like.
Pretty close to a square.
Okay.
Yeah,
If I could just ask you to approach and maybe explain for the record.
that's Rose Hall right there.
That's Rose Hall, and we're just going just behind Rose Hall. Is here.
Right, but you had to set aside 20 acres, and that's that big
And
piece.
that's that whole big house, that big piece of it. Yep, okay, yes, field and woodland, but we're definitely intending to use this space here.
Okay. So I'm just going to describe, this is an exhibit, this is the master plan, it says it's updated.
If I could also just let,
Will you
let
show
me
me
know.
what
Yes,
that-
yes.
See
Well,
that.
let me just describe it for the record. There's a dark, I guess, a square in the middle of the property, and there's a light shaded area with, it's almost a square in shape, and that would be the area that you pointed out. I'm gonna put an X on it, and that's the 20, a little over 20 acres that's been delineated as a cemetery, which is a requirement under the ordinance.
So we have no intention to use all of that space, but yes.
And the square that is directly in the corner of that cemetery will be directly in the vicinity of Rose Hall? Okay.
Just a burial plot there, yes. I've been told that there's a difference between a burial plot and a cemetery, and that what we're asking is a burial plot. I don't know the finer details.
And our ordinance refers to a cemetery, so I think they both work in this situation.
As long as we're in a common understanding.
Yes, I think those uses are interchangeable according to the zoning ordinance.
And you have no intention of using 20 acres, but you have to go with our 20-acre minimum.
Now, fortunately, they had enough acreage,
To do it, right?
and I think some of that will continue in farming or orchard or whatever issue it is
Absolutely.
now. Yeah, so-
And grazing animals, yes.
Yeah, so it'll just be part of the
But they'll
village.
still be able to use more
Yeah,
of
most of it.
all of it if you want as a burial place in the future, next 100 or 200 years.
Are any of those areas that are delineated as the 20 acres under easement, do you know?
I don't think, Sarah,
The whole property is under county ag, and so it's not like a French and Pitt easement, but it is, it's a area restricted to agriculture
Okay,
under the county.
right, but the area that you're going to be using for the burial plots, is that used for agriculture today?
You say
Part of it
grazing,
yes, the cows are grazing. Trees are growing. So yes, some of it
Okay.
is used for agriculture.
That's the only question I have. Any other questions from the board?
No.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Mr. Wheeler, do you have any questions for the applicant or anything you'd like to add?
No, I had no idea from the description that was in the paper where this was located. And I'm amazed where it is located. There are many mysterious things happen there. Are we going to be finishing this up, or is all of my thoughts supposed to come out at once?
So I'm going to ask you, once they're finished, if you have any questions for them, you can ask them. And then I'm going to give you an opportunity, if you want to be sworn, your party, so you have an opportunity to present evidence. So why don't we just let them finish, or do you have any questions?
I'm certainly at a loss here, because there's been no knowledge of this beforehand. Probably 3 or 4 hours ago is when I became aware of it. And you said you notified the neighbors. We don't qualify in that group apparently, but,
I completely apologize.
no, do not apologize. I don't mean it that way at all.
I had read within, I think, 500 yards or meters or something, the feet. And so from that site, that plot, there wasn't anyone else within the 500 feet or yards. So I completely apologize. No intention to,
I'm just trying to point out how unprepared I am in terms of questions or whatever.
it's been in front of the planning commission.
I can't hear this.
The planning commission has reviewed the application. So do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the witness? Ms. Jeans?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay.
Come back to me in an hour or so.
Ms. Jeans, do you have anything else you'd like to offer?
I think for those founders who are sort of approaching the end of their life, it would really be a fulfillment of their wishes to be able to have their last remains be there in this part of the earth, this land that they've been caring for.
Okay, thank you.
So it would mean a lot to them.
So that's it for the applicant, then why don't we just conclude your case, and I would ask have anything you'd like to say? Would you like to be sworn, give testimony?
Can I just ask a question without being?
You can ask a question.
Are you, I don't know how much I'm supposed to be allowed to ask. Are you talking about cremation and then dispersing the remains, or are you?
A full body, dig a hole, put the body in there, cover it up.
No box, completely natural? Excellent.
Yes, no box.
That's great.
Just directly there. A cloth or
Right,
a,
of course, yeah.
or a sheet, a wrapping, but otherwise nothing more.
Anything else, Strong? Anything from the public? Any comments? Okay, with that, then why don't we close the hearing? We have 45 days to issue a decision in the matter. If you wanted to make a motion to approve it.
Well, I could make a motion, even if it's not written. I could make a motion to approve. I think I need the paragraph. Well, you can fill in the paragraph. I would make a motion to permit this conditional use.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions from the audience? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, of course. So then,
Jeans, we will follow up with a written decision to you.
Wonderful, and that will be about 45 days, month and a
That's
half.
correct, yeah. It's
or
likely.
less, but your official as of today, that he's got it documented, so everybody knows.
Just so we know where the use is and so that you have something for your records and so does the township.
Great, wonderful. And I completely
That's
apologize.
right, that's right.
but-
You're not the only one. Are you in charge of the
Yes.
Well, that's it for now.
Yeah, that's what-
Move on to another conditional use hearing for 2283.
Yep. Thanks for listening.
Thank you all very much.
Come on, sister, know
One up.
that we're just swapping emails and phone numbers here.
Can I approach the board?
Oh, boy.
Oh, thank you.
Not as bad as it looks.
I mean, we read this all together.
It looks
huh?
bad, but it's all inclusive.
Well,
How many trees did we kill today?
I have a message for you with the green cards.
okay, it would be fun. Take care of it.
All right, so why don't we just, you ready, Nancy? So we have the second hearing. This is the application of Norman and Nancy Norris for the property located at 2286 Beaver Hill Road, Bertrandville, PA, identified as tax parcel number 25-4-93, consisting of 8 acres located in the RC Rural Conservation District and approved with a single-family dwelling. The applicant proposes to construct a pool, patio, building addition to the existing dwelling on the property and requests conditional use approval with stormwater management facilities and/or storm sewer systems associated with the improvements in precautionary steep slopes pursuant to section 390-98B1A of the Township zoning ordinance, as well as prohibited steep slope areas pursuant to 390-98B2B of the Township zoning ordinance. I have several exhibits. T1 is the application. T2 is the proof of publication of the public notice. T3 is correspondence dated September 8th from applicant's counsel Ryan Jennings confirming the date of this hearing. Exhibit T4 is a September 20th, 2021 LTL Consultants Review Letter on the application. Exhibit T5 is an aerial of the property, and Exhibit T6 is the Township zoning ordinance by reference. As I've stated before, I'm going to ask if anyone would like to request party status to the application. I won't go over it again. You don't have to be a party to ask questions or make statements, but you would be given an opportunity to have the decision, and if you didn't like it, then you could appeal it. That's basically, and you can present evidence during the hearing if you like as well. So with that, would anyone like to request party status? I see a gentleman. If you
My
could
name
just,
is Myerson. I'm sorry I'm not standing because I've got this laptop on my desk. I'm wondering if I could have a copy of the exhibits. I'm a party in interest because I'm the downhill neighbor.
and if you could state, are you requesting party status to the
Yes, sir.
application? And could you state your name and address for the record?
Sure, it's Hy, H-Y, Myerson, M-A-Y-E-R-S-O-N.
And you say you live adjacent to the property,
1585 Hollow Road.
and that is adjacent.
That's down the slope.
Okay, is it,
The answer is yes, down the steep slope.
okay.
It's close, it's not adjacent, but there is no objection from the applicant regarding Mr. Myerson's request for party
Okay,
status.
thank
And I
I'm
have-
sorry, your name is?
Brian Jennings,
Hello.
hello. I have a set of
Go ahead.
exhibits for Mr. Myerson.
Thank you.
Sure.
Would anyone else like to request party status? I mean, I would recommend that we grant party status to
Yes.
Mr. Myerson. Anyone else like to request party status? Okay, with that, why don't we proceed with the applicant's case? Mr. Jennings?
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Good evening. As stated, my name is Ryan Jennings with the firm Unreturner Burke and Freeze, here on behalf of applicants Norman and Nancy Norris. I'm joined for purposes of the hearing by Mr. Norris, Mr. Dan Mckenna, the project's engineer, Hillary Mork, the project's architect, and John Kraz, the builder of Griffiths Construction Incorporated. In the interest of time and our presentation, while I have four professionals with me, I only intend to call two as witnesses this evening, namely Mr. Norris and Mr. Mckenna. As stated by the solicitor, the applicants merely seek conditional use approval for the implementation of stormwater management facilities within areas of steep slopes on this subject property. The subject property being an 8-acre parcel, zoned residential conservation, or RC. The property's address is 2286 Beaver Hill Road. Because the board is quite familiar, having heard numerous conditional use applications in recent weeks and months, I won't belabor or bore you with legal citations. I will note, however, that a conditional use is a legislatively determined permitted use so long as certain criteria is met. We intend to meet that criteria this evening, and we seek conditional use approval pursuant to sections 390, 98, B1A, and 390, 98, B2B. So with that, by way of introduction, I'd like to call my first witness. Perhaps both of my witnesses can be sworn simultaneously. I will first call Norman Norris.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Norris, could you please identify yourself for the board, spelling your name?
Yes, Norman L. Norris. Norman, probably Norris with two R's, N-O-R-R-I-S.
And do you currently reside at the subject property, 2286 Beaver Hill Road?
I do.
And does anyone reside there with you?
Yes, my wife, excuse me, my wife Nancy.
And for how long have you lived there?
Almost 45 years.
Okay. And is your wife and co-applicant Nancy, is she the title owner of the property?
She is.
And is that demonstrated in the document we've marked as exhibits, applicant's exhibit A1?
Yes, that's correct.
And I assume you're authorized to provide testimony on behalf of this application, this property, and your wife?
Yes, I believe so.
Very good. Did I correctly state that the property is zoned RC, or residential conservation,
That's my understanding.
and that it's approximately 8 acres in area?
Correct.
I take it that you're familiar with the conditional use application that brings us here this evening, is that right?
I am.
And is that the document marked as Exhibit A2?
Yes.
And in my introductory remarks, did I accurately capture the essence of the application?
Yes, I believe so.
Did we provide written mailed notice to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property regarding tonight's hearing?
Yes, I think so.
And that was done in accordance with the zoning ordinance requirements, right?
Yes.
And if the board would turn to Exhibit A3, you'll see the affidavit of mailing from a notary public from my office, as well as those individuals receiving written notice. Mr. Myerson was one of those individuals, and I provided Mr. Thompson with the certified green cards, which indicate the certified mailing. Using Exhibit A4, could you describe for the board where the property is generally located?
Well, it's outlined in red on A4. And it does front on Hollow Road and has no frontage on Beaver Hill, although there is a driveway across another parcel owned by Nancy with access to Beaver Hill.
Okay. As we sit here tonight, is your dwelling visible from Beaver Hill Road?
Tonight, no, it would not be visible.
What about from Hollow Road?
No, I don't believe so.
If it were during the day,
During the day.
would it
yeah,
be visible?
During the day,
I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
Okay.
You have to have pretty good eyes.
Very good. So using the Google Earth imagery that we've included as Exhibit A5, could you describe for the board what those various photographs depict?
All of A5. Well, yeah, the red dot seems to locate approximately where the residence is on the 8 acres.
And what about the next two photos?
The next two photos, that's a shot of Beaver Hill Road where it's very narrow, makes a turn to the right. The driveway, which I referred to earlier, goes left where the road bears right.
Okay. And where the road bears right, you see a brown residence. That's not your residence,
No,
correct?
it is not, but that belongs to this phone. SPOHA.
So let's discuss the project itself in general terms. What exactly are you proposing to do or to modify?
Well, we've lived there, like I said, almost 45 years. We built the house, and we built the house at a time when we had 3 young children, 4, 7, and 10. We were a young couple. And we built a house that was perfect for a young family, but not so great for an aging couple. So all the bedrooms are upstairs with no elevator. All the full baths with bathing facilities are upstairs, again with no elevator. There are 2 powder rooms downstairs, but no bathing facilities. So it's not well suited. Plus, it's 45 years old, and we only updated the kitchen and 1 bathroom in that period of time. So it needs updating.
So is it fair to suggest that the application for conditional use approval is to incorporate stormwater management facilities to facilitate a pool and patio renovation and a kitchen renovation?
Yes, yeah, well, the kitchen was done 10 years ago. We don't anticipate much of anything in the kitchen, although some new windows. But there is an existing pool, but it is a number of steps down from the basement level. Again, a challenge for older people trying to get there. The plans call for the elevator to go to the basement and actually building a pool on top of the pool. That it will be filled and the pool will be on top of it, so it's right at basement level and therefore usable. And in the front, there are a number of steps to get into the house. Those will be eliminated with a very slightly inclined ramp. So that, we're fine now, but we're not going to be that way in 10 years. And so it's to serve that purpose, so we can continue to live there in our last year.
Okay. And are you also using this renovation opportunity as a means to improve the existing septic system at the property?
Yes, we are. The well, everything's on site except electric, which comes up underground from Hollow Road. Everything else, we have propane in a tank. We have our own well, which has been very reliable for 45 years, nothing to be changed there. Our septic system, which this is old, 45 years old, requires quite a bit of maintenance. So we're going to use a modern drip irrigation septic system as the plan here to kind of update that and be sure that these maintenance problems go away.
And in order to accomplish all that you've just described, have you hired a professional engineer
Yes, we have.
and a residential architect
Yes, we have.
and a landscape architect?
Yes, that's correct.
And we'll save the more technical questions for Mr. McKenna here shortly, but do you reasonably believe that the project complies with all RC zoning district area and bulk requirements?
I believe so. Those were our instructions to our professionals, and hopefully they do.
Okay. So it's your understanding then that if the conditional use application is approved, you won't need additional zoning relief?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you believe that the project, once completed, will be architecturally compatible with the surroundings?
I believe so. It will look a lot like the house that's there now, which is all in earth zone. It would be no more visible from either Beaver Hill or Hollow Road than the current house is. And so to the extent it's currently blends in, hopefully the addition and renovations will too.
And at 8 acres in area, do you believe it's suitably sized to accommodate your project?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you know if the project will have any effect on water or sewer service of the township? That is?
Well, there is no public water or sewer, at least in our area of the township, perhaps elsewhere, but not in our area. So it won't have any effect on that. It'll be all on site as it is now.
And do you believe it will have any adverse impact on the character of the existing neighborhood?
No, I do not.
And there's no commercial or home occupation component to your project, right?
No, I'm retired. And so is my wife Nancy.
And do you intend to maintain your property in a manner that will protect the character and property values
Yes,
of not only your property but of others?
yes.
Do you think that the proposed use will have any detrimental economic impact on the township or on emergency services?
No, I do not.
Do you have any reason to believe whatsoever that the project will negatively impact the public health, safety, morals, or welfare?
No,
Is the property subject to certain conservation restrictions or limitations?
it is.
Let's talk about those. Is that through the French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust?
Yes.
By way of general summary, what does the conservation easement marked as Exhibit A6 provide or limit?
Well, it has a residential building area, and as you can see on the map, which I think is the last page of that exhibit, a blue area is shown, and that's where our current residence is, and that's the only place that we're permitted to do anything, essentially anything with this property except maintain what's there.
Okay, so for purposes of the clear record, we're talking about the last page of Exhibit A6, and it's the green portion that is protected by the conservation easement.
Yes, as is the blue area as well, but not as severely restricted as the green area.
So the blue area that's slightly restricted does not prohibit you from pursuing this application of this project, right?
That's correct.
Did you proactively make outreach to the French and Pickering Creeks
Yes.
Trust in advance of this project?
I did. I presented the plans that Mr. Mckenna had prepared and are part of this application to the French and Pickering Trust and asked them if it complied with our easement.
And did they indicate in written form that it did in fact comply and that they're supportive of the application?
Yes,
And that's the document marked as Exhibit A7, correct?
yes, that's correct.
Did you appear before the Township Planning Commission last month on September 16th?
I did,
And that was specifically for purposes of presenting this application, correct?
correct.
And is it fair to suggest that your presentations and plans were well received by the PC?
Yes, it did, through no effort of mine, it was all done by Mr. Mckenna.
Very good.
A good job in explaining what we were trying to do.
Okay, so is it your understanding then that the Planning Commission last month recommended unanimously that this board approve your conditional use application?
Yes.
Those are all the questions I have for this witness.
Any questions from the board?
Say mine for him.
Mr. Myerson, do you have questions for the
I have-
applicants?
May I remain here?
That's fine, as long as we can hear you.
Thank you. Mr. Norris, you lived in the same house for 45 years,
Correct.
and have you recently sold a property in this parcel that you own?
No,
And do you live in Boynton Beach too?
no.
Okay. Now, I don't believe I got any notice of this hearing that you said took place a couple weeks ago.
The planning commission hearing?
Yes.
It's not a hearing.
Yeah, it was a planning commission meeting where the application was discussed.
We didn't, as neighbors, didn't get any.
It's
Uh,
not a
And there's no
requirement.
requirement in the ordinance that you would receive notice of that.
Mr. Norris, you received a letter from us?
Email, but not a
Yes.
letter.
Yes. And did I express a problem with this?
Well, you expressed a problem with respect to another parcel, not with respect to this particular parcel.
Well, that's a matter of opinion, isn't it? Whether the water that streams down and floods our property emanates from your property too.
Well, I don't believe it does, but I'll leave that to our expert.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now, your experts prepared some drawings. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions on them. On these drawings, Mr. Norris, do you know where Hollow Road is?
And so we don't have a copy of these drawings? I
Yeah,
don't know if
they're
you have
in
a
a
copy.
small form.
Okay, so this would be exhibit 11, is that correct? These are the same plans?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe Mr. Mckenna can help us.
Right, but he hasn't yet provided
Yeah,
testimony,
yeah.
so I'll object at this point and just say these questions might be best suited after those materials are presented and we hear testimony.
Yeah, we haven't, this plan is in evidence that hasn't even been presented by the applicant yet. Well, why don't we wait?
Mr. Norris presented only this plan to me in an email. I've studied it and looked at it, and I can't tell from this plan where Hollow Road is. So I'd like to know if Mr. Norris can tell when these plans prepared for him where Hollow Road is.
Why don't,
Doesn't have the whole.
Right here, Mr. Mayor.
Why don't we-
Right here.
Now, in relation to this
Yeah,
or
and
this.
this is this.
well, we
So where's
can't,
Hollow Road?
we can't, Mr. Myerson, we can't recognize any of this when I can't tell when you point to something. Why don't you wait until the witness,
May I show you?
Mr. Mckenna, is called?
Here are the plans in large. And I'm asking.
Is this multiple copies of the same thing?
No, it's 3 documents.
Because we all need to
Yeah.
see it.
Well, we have it here.
And Nancy must be able to get it into the record, so,
Do you want to have this marked?
Yes.
Well, okay. We'll call this M1.
I think it's Norris one, he's the witness. Correct?
Well, it's your exhibit though, Mr. Myerson.
But it's
But
this.
we haven't been, that has not been introduced yet, so.
Exactly, so it's going to be the same thing when we get there.
Which one is that? So let the record note that
It's
11,
yes,
that's exhibit 11.
okay.
Right.
So M1 is the same as Norris 11, except it's the enlarged version.
Okay.
So what I want to know is where, if you can tell where on Hollow Road this is.
Well, I think you asked the question, and I think, did you answer it?
Answered it to the best of my ability.
Okay.
So in other words, he cannot tell on this one or this one where Hollow Road is.
Okay, well, that's argument that you make.
I'm asking you.
Okay. Well, let's wait.
Okay.
I think
Let's get to the-
he's asked your you've asked your question and he's answered it.
He's
Do you
answered-
have any other questions for Mr. Norris?
Yeah, are you gonna let him answer my
I
question?
think he answered the question.
Well, then let's just be sure you've answered the question. In relation to this property,
Yes.
this is the one on the most right-hand side of the document. Can you tell where Hollow Road is?
Yes,
Where?
here,
So Hollow Road is downhill?
down here.
Okay, and
Okay,
is
so
there a road?
he's pointing to the left of the plan,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And where would Beaver Hill be?
Up here.
Thank you.
And he's pointing to the right.
Yes.
Right. Now, is there a road from your house down to Hollow Road?
No road, there's a driveway.
A driveway? That used to be a road, it was a
It's
township
an
road
old township road.
that was abandoned.
It was abandoned, we built our driveway on it before we owned the parcel behind.
Before you owned the parcel behind it.
Yeah.
And what's the parcel behind it?
It's an 8-acre piece that fronts on Beaver Hill Road.
And who lives there?
No one. It's a barn and a carriage shed.
So it's just an empty property, or is there a
No,
house?
no house. There's a barn and a carriage shed. And horse.
A barn and carriage. And when was that barn built?
In the 80s.
In the 80s. And it's a horse barn?
Horse barns.
Right, and was there ever an application?
Yes,
there?
it was.
Is,
And a conditional use hearing.
okay, what's the size of that barn?
86 stalls.
6 stalls, about 100 by 200 feet, is that right? No. 6 stalls, 3 on each side?
3 on each side.
Mr. Myerson, are we talking about a barn on this property or is
On
this another
his-
property?
On his property adjoining it.
He's
Okay,
talking about.
but that's a different parcel,
part.
it's not part of this
Right, the issue
application.
is,
Well, wait, if you have any other questions, you can ask them, but if not, then why don't we
Mr.
just let the
Morrison?
applicant call his next
You
witness?
can share your opinion later,
Yeah,
but now we're doing the testimony.
well, and I'm entitled to cross-examination,
Mhm.
right?
But please stay on the
That's right.
topic of the conditional use.
Well, the conditional use must abide by a stormwater plan, but the township has to abide by, is that correct?
yes.
Okay, so there's a stormwater plan that hasn't even been discussed yet.
Well, that's what this plan is, that is
This
marked as
plan, the
exhibit
one I'm
11.
holding.
Correct.
Which is why you're asking.
Right, so that's why I'm asking the questions that you're not allowing me to ask.
Well, this hasn't been introduced, we have an expert that's gonna testify with respect to this plan. And if you have questions concerning it,
Well,
you
it's
probably
Mr.
wanna
Morris-
ask the person that generated the plan, not the applicant, because he has not testified about this.
It was presented as his evidence.
This has not been presented yet, this plan.
We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay. So, Mr. Norris, I did mail you a video of what happens with the stormwater, is that correct?
Can you be more precise as to what the video is about?
How many videos have I mailed you?
I think you mischaracterized what the video is about.
Okay, well, let's look at the video.
Well, wait, if you have something you want to present, then you'll be given an opportunity to present something into evidence. But this is concerning questions for the applicant.
Well, I think the big issue in this case is this downhill stormwater flow that creates a river across Hollow Road and down my street. And if you're not going to allow me to get to it, through the owner of the property who built the property, then I understand, but the township has a responsibility here.
Well, if you want to present a video that you took, then you can do that when you're
I
given an
sent it to
opportunity
Mr.
to
Norris.
present.
I'm asking
Well,
you-
whether you send it to Mr. Norris or not doesn't really have any relevance. If you took it, then you can document what it shows.
I've taken it, I want to ask if this is a correct representation of what happened. Doesn't have to depend on me.
I object. Mr. Norris has no way of knowing what the video portrays.
He saw it.
Well, do you have any other questions of Mr. Norris? You'll be given an opportunity to present a video if you like. But whether or not he's seen it or not, whether or not you showed it to him, doesn't really have any relevance here. So if you can represent what it shows, then you can do that when you're given an opportunity as a
I
part
don't
of
have
the
to represent
application.
what it shows, I want to show what it shows. Is there some reason you can't see what it shows? You
Well,
don't need representations.
Blake,
The
No, he's
person
saying
that
you
took
can
the
show the
video
video
has
when
to
you start.
put that into evidence.
Right.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions, Mr. Myerson, that don't involve the video?
Yes. Mr. Norris, are you familiar with the water runoff below to Hollow Road?
Which runoff?
Can I show you which runoff? The one that's in the video.
We'll give you an opportunity to present the video when you're given an opportunity to present evidence, Mr. Myerson.
I'm asking.
He did not testify anything about stormwater, so you're going beyond his direct testimony at this point. Do you have any other questions of the witness?
This is the part I'm allowed to go beyond his direct if he doesn't want to talk about it.
Well, I would suggest that we have an engineer, and he's going to talk about stormwater.
We can, but this is the gentleman that paid for all this to be done.
Well, if you have evidence you want to present concerning stormwater and a video that you took and representations about what stormwater, how it affects your property, then you're going to be given an opportunity to do that.
I'm going to do it through the
But
witness
he hasn't
himself,
talked
not through
about
myself.
stormwater yet, Mr. Myerson.
Well, that's the issue. I'm asking him if he's familiar with the runoff. That's what I've asked him. Are you not going to permit me to ask the question?
Do you have any experience with runoff, Mr. Norris?
Everyone has experience with runoff, but I'm not sure what he's talking about, which parcel he's talking about. I don't think it's this parcel.
Do you know what parcel it is?
I think it's an unrelated 5-acre parcel, which is down opposite his home.
Okay. I think that's the answer to the question, Mr. Myerson.
Who originally owned that 5-acre parcel?
Originally,
Yes.
my wife and I, now Nancy owns it alone.
Now Nancy owns that 5-acre parcel.
Correct.
I do.
That's correct.
And that's the parcel that has the runoff.
Objection. It's a mischaracterization of Mr. Norris's testimony.
Pass it.
I'll sustain the objection. Do you have any other question you want to answer?
I
You wanna
can't
ask Mr.
answer,
Myerson?
but I can ask
Sorry.
questions. So, Mr. Norris, is it your testimony that you're not familiar with the runoff from the Norris properties above to my property below?
I have very limited familiarity with it. It's a long distance from our residence, and I do not
What's
go
the
down
long distance, how many
over
yards?
a quarter mile, and it's, as you know, it's a rather steep slope. I don't go down there.
So it's a steep slope from your residence to that
No,
residence?
that's not a steep slope. It's a steep slope from the eastern portion of that 5-acre parcel to the western edge of that 5-acre parcel. That's a steep slope.
And is it not a steep slope from your property to mine below?
I don't know how you define steep slope. It's on a diagonal. I don't know how steep that is.
Well, it's marked, your house, your residence is marked in your plan at 475 feet, is that correct? Or should I show it to you?
He didn't, again, he didn't testify to this plan.
I would much prefer that my engineer expert testify to issues of steep slope.
I would like to ask the questions.
I think he testified, Mr. Myerson, that it was a down slope towards Hollow Road. Correct?
That's correct, for sure.
So, Mr. Norris, can you identify?
I'm going to object. This plan has not been introduced yet, and this is just
This is
abuse of line question.
cross-examination of the owner of the property.
Mr. Myerson, he didn't generate this plan. We have an engineer that generated the plan.
He paid for the plan.
That's irrelevant.
I beg to differ.
I think the
On the
engineer,
Sir, can you
you wait till he's done talking before you start going? Right,
So I apologize.
Thank you, I accept it.
Thank you.
He didn't generate the plan. The engineer generated the plan. So if you would like to ask questions about the plan and how it was generated and what it shows, then the better witness to ask would be the engineer.
So what I'm asking is, he paid for the plan, if you don't consider that generating the plan, he thought of the necessity for a plan, but I can't ask him questions about what's happening, whether he knows of the water flow. Mr. Norris, do you have a stormwater prevention plan for these properties?
I understand Mr. Mckenna has prepared such a plan, and as part of the plan, I believe you're holding, but I do not know the details of that plan.
For the whole property that you own, when your wife owns,
So far as I know, there is no stormwater management plan for the 5-acre parcel or the 8-acre parcel where the barn is, because none was required at the time that any work was done, and the parcel that's opposite your property is subject to a conservation easement where nothing can be built on it, so there's no necessity for a stormwater plan.
well, if you lived at my house, you'd understand the necessity for that.
I object. Is there a
Mr.
question?
Myerson, do you have any other questions?
Well, yeah, no
That's the
necessity.
argument you're making.
Are you saying there's no necessity for a stormwater plan for your property and the adjoining Norris properties, Linda Norris properties, Nancy Norris
I
properties?
know of none.
So there's no need for that. In West Vincent Township, do you have a stormwater plan?
I object.
We're
The
not here to
township is
answer
not-
questions. I think you're referring to properties that aren't the subject of this application.
I'm referring to the law that requires the township to have a stormwater file on this. That's what I'm referring to. I can give you the act number.
Well, we'd like to actually move to the testimony of the engineer. If Mr. Jennings, you're going to call your engineer, he's going to talk about stormwater, is that correct?
I am and he is, yes.
Okay. Why don't we allow him, why don't you move forward with that, Mr.
Thank
Jennings?
you, I would love that opportunity. Just on
Thank you.
redirect,
Being as how I'm stopped, I'll sit down and let you continue. Thank you.
I just have a few questions on redirect for Mr. Norris that might clarify some things, ever so briefly. Mr. Norris, does your property, the subject property, 2286 Beaver Hill Road, is it adjacent to Mr. Myerson's property?
No.
Do you have any reason whatsoever to believe that this subject property, 2286 Beaver Hill Road, will in any way affect Mr. Myerson's property?
No, I mean, I have no reason to believe that. Correct.
Has Mr. Myerson corresponded with you via email in recent days and weeks?
He has.
And have you done your best to explain to him that the subject property we're here for this evening is not the subject property, the 5-acre parcel that he is fixated on?
I believe I have, I hope I have.
Okay.
Perhaps I haven't done a good enough job, and that's why he's confused.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions for this witness.
I have a few.
But there's no recross.
You're limited-
You
you can also have
cross-examine the
a recall.
witness,
Yes,
you cross-examine the witness. There's no sort of rebuttal to it. So,
it's a recross of what he's just testified, limited to that. I'm allowed that. You know that. Right?
I'll allow a question, go ahead. If it's limited to what Mr. Jennings asked the witness.
Mr. Norris, my letter was addressed to you, Nancy, your son-in-law and daughter, is that correct?
Your email was, yes.
Yes. So Nancy, who is the owner, now, is there any ownership of any property between your house and my house, other than yourself?
I don't own any property in Bertrand.
Well, your application seems to indicate one.
I'm a joint applicant with Nancy, but I don't own the property, as I testified earlier.
Okay, so between you, Nancy, and your son-in-law, there's nobody that owns downhill from there other than your family, right?
I'm not clear with the question. Downhill from there, where is there?
downhill from your properties, the only property between your properties and mine is yours. Is that not correct? There's no other ownership. You're saying you don't own the property. I'm saying there's no other ownership for all that property other than you, Nancy, and your children.
Just to be clear, Nancy owns the property from where the 8 acres we're talking about on down, on the opposite side, but on down to the place where your home is. She owns that.
And Mr. Norris, you were a patent attorney
I was.
and presently own a lot of storage facilities. Is that
I
correct?
object. There's no relevance here.
I withdraw the question.
That's not relevant to the proceeding. Go ahead, Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call our second witness, Daniel Mckenna. Mr. McKenna, could you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Daniel Mckenna, Mckenna, and I'm a senior engineer, licensed professional engineer. I work with D.L. Howell and Associates. And my firm put together the plan set and the application that we're discussing tonight.
Thank you. Just to be clear, you're a licensed civil engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, correct?
That's correct.
And you have a civil engineering degree from Penn State University, right?
That's correct.
Do you have experience in small and large-scale single-family residential development,
Yes, I do.
as well as subdivisions?
Yes.
Do you maintain extensive knowledge in permitting processes required by Chester County municipalities as well as PennDOT?
Yes.
And does that also include with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection?
Yes, it does.
And does the PA Department of Environmental Protection handle matters such as stormwater?
Yes, it does.
Have you appeared before various municipalities in Pennsylvania to provide hearing testimony,
Yes, I have.
including Chester County,
Yes.
including this very municipality?
I believe I was here years ago on a separate matter in the township.
Okay. And have you been recognized by such boards as an expert civil engineer?
Yes, I have.
Okay. At this time, assuming there are no additional questions as to Mr. McKenna's qualifications, I would ask the board to recognize Mr. McKenna as an expert civil engineer.
I stipulate
And I've seen
that-
Mr. McKenna testify before, and I would recommend that the board accept him as a professional engineer.
Further, I stipulate that he is an expert.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. McKenna.
So you indicated that you were responsible for, in part at least, putting together the conditional use application, right?
That's right.
So I assume you're not only familiar with the subject application, but the subject property as well.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Are you also familiar with West Vincent Township ordinances,
Yes, I am.
as well as those provisions and requirements that pertain specifically to this application?
That's correct.
What portions of the property are proposed to be affected by this project?
Yeah, I have some boards here and displays. I think will help here, but as mentioned earlier, the parcel is 8 acres in size, and really we're talking about approximately 22,000 square feet of disturbance here on the eastern end, right close to Beaver Hill Road, around the existing residence. A large portion of the back half of the property, I call it back half as it goes down to Hollow Road, is to remain undisturbed. So it's really, our activities are limited up here again on the eastern end of the parcel.
And why is conditional use approval necessary for the desired renovation?
Conditional use approval is required to install stormwater management systems and storm sewer systems in areas of steep slopes, both precautionary and prohibited steep slopes.
Okay, and does this renovation project, did it seek to avoid building, the pool, the patio, those sorts of improvements associated with the dwelling in areas of steep slopes?
Yes, so the existing dwelling itself has steep slopes adjacent to the building. The pool, as Norman mentioned, is in place of the existing pool, so the footprint is where it was previously. Same with some patio improvements, but largely the steep slopes are there adjacent to the existing structure, so any addition really would impact those steep slopes.
Okay. And just for purposes of a clear hearing record, the plan that you have projected on the easel before us, is that the same 3 page plan set that we've marked as Exhibit A11?
Yes, it is.
And is that dated October 1st of 2021?
Yes, it is.
And is that titled a grading permit plan
It is, yes.
featuring grading, erosion and sedimentation controls, PCSM and existing features plans
That's correct.
with various notes and details?
Yes,
And you were present for the entirety of Mr. Norris's testimony, correct?
I was.
Are you in agreement with the entirety of his testimony as best you know?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and Mr. Norris indicated that you presented last month before the Planning Commission.
That's correct.
And did they in fact offer a unanimous recommendation of approval?
They did.
Okay. Did the Chester County Planning Commission also have an opportunity to review this application?
Yes, it did.
And is it fair to suggest that the County Planning Commission issued a clean and favorable review letter dated September 22nd of 2021?
That's fair to say. I believe they had some minor issues involving not compacting the soil in the infiltration bed that we have proposed for stormwater management, and I think we can address that with our construction sequence and details on the plan.
Okay. So no impediments from the County Planning Commission or the Township's Planning Commission?
No.
Okay. And that's the document we've marked as Exhibit A9, correct?
Yes.
Have you additionally had the opportunity to correspond with the Township's engineer, LTL Consultants, specifically Mr. Latchaw?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And has Mr. Latchaw authored various review letters regarding this project?
Yes, he has.
3 in total?
Yes, 2 that involve the grading permit application, stormwater management, and then 1 as it pertains to the conditional use applications.
And are all 3 of those LTL Consultant review letters collectively marked as Exhibit A10?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Would you consider, given your expertise, for these review letters to be favorable in nature?
I would say that they were I would say pertinent reviews, and they had some good comments in them. Nothing that we couldn't overcome with some plan revisions, and that's the plan you see before us tonight. They were generally all will comply to the comments made, and some administrative items that normally meets the process with the township to proceed.
Okay, so those review letters, primarily of September 2021, culminated in the final plan set that we're looking at here tonight?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, in preparing the engineered plans, have you had an opportunity to consult with not only Mr. Norris, but also the project's architect and landscape architect?
Yes, I have.
Using the finalized plans sheets, Exhibit A11, could you explain for the board all the material thereon that you find pertinent for purposes of this application?
Sure. So on the northern end of the building is where there is a building addition that's proposed, and a new driveway connection there on the north end. Then on the existing garage, there's also a small addition. There are some revisions that are proposed to the sort of parking port out front of the house, again, just to level that up and make it more accessible. And then here on the southern end of the home is where we have proposed our stormwater infiltration bed to handle our stormwater increases. And then even further south here is the replacement septic area that was mentioned earlier.
In your expert engineering opinion, is the proposed use consistent with the purposes of the township zoning ordinance, including the residential conservation zoning district?
Yes, it is.
Is it your opinion that the proposed use meets all of the ordinance standards and regulations?
Yes, it does.
Now, is the proposed use consistent with the township's comprehensive plan, Act 537 sewage facilities plan, as well as public service and utilities to the extent they're applicable?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you have any reason to believe whatsoever that the proposed use will negatively impact the public health, safety, morals, or welfare?
No, I do not.
We've heard this evening from Mr. Myerson regarding his property. It's located at 1585 Hollow Road. Are you generally familiar with Mr. Myerson's property, including its location?
Generally, I guess not specifically. I think there's an exhibit that maybe shows some parcels, if I can get a better 100% sure of where your property is located, sir? Fine. You see, I think it's, just I can use the exhibit. I see. This is,
I think it's exhibit A10.
this is A4.
Exhibit 9?
You want to
Six.
just-
Exhibit 6.
Pick the one you like.
Is there, yeah, was there one that represents? Okay. If I'm, so if I'm looking at it, I'll go to A4. It's your parcel. Show me which one is you.
Here on A4, right here, if you go down the road, you have the paved road, right there, my road.
Okay, to
That
the,
one.
okay,
You
gotcha.
see it, right?
I-
Can't miss it.
Mr. Myerson,
Sure.
just let the applicant.
Sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I know exactly the indicators, and I am familiar with the location of his
Which-
property, yes.
Which
Yeah.
page are you looking at?
So I'm looking at exhibit A4, and I believe he's to the north end of Hollow Road.
Yeah,
Just off the
exhibit 6.
Could you identify that for the record, if there's a parcel number on that exhibit?
Let me see. I believe it's 25-4-57, 10 acres in size, I believe that's his parcel.
So, Mr. McKenna, does the subject property touch Mr. Myerson's property?
No, it does not.
Is it across the street from Mr. Myerson's property?
No, it is not.
Yes, it's.
Would you suggest that, as Mr. Norris stated earlier, that it's approximately a quarter of a mile, if not more, from the subject property?
It appears about right. I have to scale it off.
Do you have an opinion as to whether any stormwater might be generated from this proposed use that may make its way to or otherwise affect Mr. Myerson's property?
So the plan that we have designed here fully meets township code. We're not seeking any relief from the stormwater management requirements. Township engineers had a chance to review the plan twice. We feel very confident that we meet the intention of the code, which provides a reduction in stormwater volume and rate of runoff. So I feel that if anything, we're reducing runoff from the property. There's some conservative estimates taken into that design. We fully comply with code. So no, I don't feel there's anything detrimental to downstream property owners from this project.
So is it your expert opinion then that with conservative estimates and at a bare minimum, you're either maintaining the status quo or more likely improving the current stormwater situation at the subject property?
I would agree with that statement, yes.
Thank you. Do you believe that Mr. Norris was correct when he stated that the project, if approved by conditional use, will require no additional zoning relief?
That's correct.
Will the construction as proposed be performed utilizing sound design and engineering principles?
Yes.
And will it incorporate proper landscaping, screening, and buffering?
Yes, it will.
And in your expert opinion, is the subject property 8 acres suitably sized to accommodate the proposed renovation?
Yes, it is.
And lastly here this evening, have all of your answers to my questions been rendered to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. I have nothing additional for this witness at this time.
The board have any questions for Mr. McKenna?
Are you responding to all of the advice given by our engineer? Are you responding to his comments? And if you have not yet, will you, in the revision to your plan?
I believe our plans address all of his engineering concerns, and the outstanding comments in his latest review letter were administrative in nature. Operation and maintenance agreement be executed. I think there's a stormwater management fund payment that needs to be made, pre-construction meetings, so on, things like that. Engineering details and design details, I think, are all sorted out at this point with the township engineer.
So you either have complied or see no impediment to complying with any engineering review comments or any planning commission review comments received to date?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I just have a question question. You're encroaching into areas of steep slope, right? And that's related to the addition, I think, that's on the side of the house?
Yeah, so the way the code reads is that it's not only the stormwater management system, which is located on the south, but also storm sewer systems. And we're doing some roof leader piping and connections from the house, basically that is adjacent to these existing steep slopes. So there's a portion here on the northern end of the house where it encroaches into the, called prohibitive, very steep slopes. And then you're right on there's also some there that's in the precautionary.
Precautionary.
But then the southern end, same thing, it's an encroachment into the precautionary slopes in the south end of the house.
And all the encroachments into the steep slopes, those are all areas where any stormwater that would be generated by those improvements would be controlled?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Myerson?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for the witness?
Sir, I presume you're being paid for all the work you've done?
Yes.
And what is your hourly rate?
I'm going to object as to relevance.
We're going to sustain that.
I think what he's being paid is important on what his testimony is. I've never heard a sustaining on that before.
I don't think
Are you sure
it's
you're
relevant.
holding, sir?
He's a professional engineer.
I'm asking what he's getting paid.
He's being paid, and I don't think there's any relevance to the questions that he was asked by his counsel in the case. If you'd like to ask him concerning the
This
questions
is
concerning the plan.
cross-examination of their expert. I'd like to know what his interest in the case is.
He admitted that he's being paid.
And how much? I mean, the difference is $5 an hour, $300 an hour, $800 an hour.
I think you've asked, it's been objected to, and I don't think it's relevant, so go ahead, proceed, Mr. Myerson.
Okay, have you seen the letter we sent, the emails Mr. Norris would refer to, Saturday, October 16th? Have you seen that?
I'm not 100% sure what this is,
How about
but
if I read it to you? There's one matter we'd like to clear up with your help. There are significant stormwater runoffs we believe to be caused by the building on your property, damaging and endangering our property and buildings. It is beyond mere continuing nuisance. Andy witnessed, that's their son, witnessed your stormwater runoff flooding our property during a recent storm. We are in the French Creek watershed. You know what the French Creek
I'm
watershed
going to object at this point. He's attempting to provide his own testimony through a back channel of disguised as cross-examination, and that's just not fair. My witness indicated that he doesn't know if he saw the email, and what Mr. Myerson is attempting to do is read about a 2 or a 3 or 4 page email into the hearing
Okay,
record.
may I introduce it as evidence?
No, I object.
This is your opportunity to ask the witness questions concerning the plan that he testified to, Mr. Myerson. If you have questions, please ask him.
So this would be Myerson too.
I object. It is not his opportunity to present evidence or testimony to this board.
Do you have any questions concerning the
Yes, I'd
plan?
like to ask him about this letter, if he's seen it prior to his testimony.
What does that
Here
have,
today,
why does that have relevance to what he's testified to concerning?
well, it's what he hasn't testified to, which is the stormwater runoff.
Well, why don't you ask him a question about that
I
rather
am,
than
I'm
putting
presenting
something in
witness
evidence?
Are you instructing me not to? Is that your position?
Go ahead and ask him a question, Mr. Myerson.
M2, have you seen this?
Again, for the record, I object to this line of questioning, as well as the document he's marked as M2.
You've seen it, I presume.
Have you seen it, Mr. McKenna?
I've seen it, yes, it's in my hand.
So before tonight.
Have you seen it before tonight?
I don't know what this is, but I believe there's been some emails. I may have seen this, yes.
And, let's take a look at, so you're familiar, are you familiar with it? West Vincent, section 302, 13 to 22. That's referred to in this letter, if you bother to look it up after you saw it.
I don't know the code sections off the top of my head, but I am familiar with West Vincent Township Code, sure.
1302, okay, how about if I read it to you then?
Is there a letter that you're referring to, Mr. Myerson?
I'm referring to Chapter 302, Stormwater Management, Article 3, Stormwater Manager Standards, Section 302:17, etc. You're familiar with that?
Sure, yes.
Yes. And now, is it your testimony that your plan, there will not be any post-construction stormwater discharge that degrade the physical, chemical, or biological characteristics of the receiving waters?
Yes.
Yes. So, now I ask you, this Exhibit 6, did you prepare this?
No.
No, have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is from, where is this originated?
Looks like it says from the French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust in the title block.
Okay, here,
What is-
8-acre dwelling and pool. Is that where it originates?
The stormwater runoff?
This, yeah, the stormwater runoff, right?
I thought you meant where the plan
I'm
originated
object.
from.
He asked me, I said yes. You're objecting?
What's the question?
What's the
Mr. Mayor?
objection?
Just please repeat the question, Mr. Myerson.
Could the court reporter please repeat the question?
This is the stormwater runoff, right? The answer was, I thought you meant where the plan originated from.
Okay. You see here,
So you're referring to Exhibit A6, which is a conservation easement, correct?
I'm referring to the conservation plan, January 2018. Right. And it shows the driveway from Norman Norris's house down almost directly to my house, isn't it? That's what it shows. You're familiar with that driveway?
Yes.
It's paved now.
Okay.
You know when it got paved?
No.
You know it was ever paved before Norris owned it?
No.
Okay, now are you familiar with any runoff? Just a few feet east of there that goes directly into here?
No.
No, have you seen the video I gave Mr. Norris?
I have.
Yeah, and so you're familiar with that stormwater runoff?
Again, I didn't necessarily know where that, I'll say that for the record, the point he's pointing to is not adjacent to this parcel, and it is not, it's to the north, if you're using this plan.
It's downhill how far?
Well, this property actually drains to the west, and that location you're pointing to is north
Where,
of this
where is
property.
the driveway? Is this the driveway starting here?
Yes.
And so it starts at approximately, if we follow this map, right here, about 480 feet. Is that correct?
That's approximately correct.
And it goes downhill,
I believe you're pointing uphill.
uphill. So where is Hollow Road down here?
Hollow Road would be to the west of.
On this one?
Yep, so if you, again, I'll go back to Exhibit A6.
No, let's stay right here on this one, so we'll be able to understand this big
Hollow-
drawing here.
Hollow Road is to the west. So you go north, south, east, west. Hollow Road is to the west.
So there's a long paved road that leads to Hollow Road. Right? And you don't show how far it is down to Hollow Road, do you?
No, we do not. It's several hundred feet, and it leaves,
So it drops several hundred feet, and you're saying,
no, it travels several hundred feet to get down to Hollow Road, and it leaves the subject parcel that we're here discussing.
and goes downhill. How do you know which way downhill it goes?
There's overall contour mapping of the area.
Right, right.
And I know that our project area and limit of disturbance drains to the west and to the south, not to the north.
Well, it must drain downhill from here this way, must it not?
I object. Mr. Myerson's being argumentative. The question has been asked and answered several times. Mr. Mckenna has explained that this subject property, subject to this conditional use application, drains to the south and the west. Mr. Myerson's property is located to the north. We can move on from this line of questions.
Mr. Myerson, do you have any other questions? I think we can understand where Hollow Road is in relation
Yeah,
to the
well,
project.
if it
so-
drains to the north, isn't the north directly downhill from
No, I don't think he said it drains. to
I'm
the north.
asking him.
Well, I think you've asked him several times, and I think he said it drains to the west.
You're saying there's no draining to the north, am I correct?
That's correct.
And it follows that quarter of a mile paved driveway down, isn't that correct?
I don't know. The driveway's existing. It doesn't, this project does not drain in that direction. This application.
It drains downhill.
I think that's been asked and answered. He said it doesn't drain in that direction.
Oh,
Mr.
I
Myerson.
understand, but I'm asking if it drains downhill.
I object. He's asking the same question multiple ways, hoping that the witness trips up and says something that he doesn't intend to
Are
say.
you
Mr.
testifying?
Myerson,
or
do you
just
have another
objecting?
question?
No,
you
well,
wanna
I
ask?
object to his testifying.
He's objecting. He's the attorney.
Yeah, but can we read back his objection?
No.
No.
Let's move forward. Do you have another question that doesn't involve which way water drains towards Hollow Road? I think
Water-
he said,
Yeah, I have another question. Water drains downhill, doesn't it?
Generally, yes.
Okay. And Hollow Road is downhill several hundred feet from this house, is that correct?
Yes.
anything else, Mr. Myerson?
Yes, give me a moment, please.
Okay.
So you've seen the video and you agreed that there is a flood occurring at my property?
I object. Mr. Mckenna did not testify to that. He
You said
simply-
you've seen the video.
Mr. Myerson, he didn't say that.
Did you say you've seen the video?
Yes.
Okay, doesn't the video show the flooding of my property downhill from this?
I am not 100% sure what that shows. I don't know that that's your property. I'm assuming that it is with your interest, but I haven't evaluated.
Okay, so it shows a severe flooding of somebody's
No,
property.
I think he said he doesn't know what it shows, Mr. Myerson.
Although I think I'm trying to clear that up, because it's clear what it shows.
Well, I'm going to
If
give
you
you an
let me show it.
opportunity to show it to the board
I'd like
when
to,
you're given an opportunity to present evidence.
I'd like to show it to him.
That you have a
May
right
I?
to. He said he doesn't know what it shows. You can show it to the board, and you can explain what it is, but I'm not going to let you show it to this witness, because it doesn't have any relevance.
Okay, so it does show that that property is being severely flooded during a rainstorm.
I object. Asked and answered. My objection has previously been sustained.
Okay, and
There's lots of
I
nasty-
also don't see
I
any
just-
relevance. He testified that the encroachments into steep slopes shown on this plan will be controlled, the stormwater will be controlled. So what do you
Well,
have to
how
ask
will it
him
be
concerning?
controlled? It's downhill. How's it, I mean, just because he says it at $800 an hour?
Go ahead, ask him questions, Mr. Myerson.
How is it controlled? Flowing downhill,
Okay,
a
so
quarter of a mile, on a steep slope. Tell us.
So the limit of disturbance was analyzed for the project. Stormwater management system was installed, meets township code. That stormwater management system infiltrates, increases in volume, right? And also mitigates peak rate of runoff from the improvements.
Okay,
So-
I didn't ask for double talk. I asked for an answer to my question.
Yeah, there's roof leaders and an inlet system that direct stormwater flows to an infiltration bed. That bed reduces volume and peak rate of runoff from stormwater events.
Does it eliminate it?
No, elimination would be negative. You need stormwater runoff to have a healthy environment.
That's your testimony. familiar with 302 West Vincent, section 13D, which reads, neither submission of an SWM, what's SWM?
Stormwater management generally,
Right.
yes.
Neither submission of an SWM site plan under the provisions herein, nor compliance with the provisions of this chapter shall relieve any person from responsibility for damage to any person or property otherwise imposed by law. Right?
That's what the code says, I believe.
And you want to read it for yourself?
I think
Have
we,
you read this before?
you've just read it, I believe you.
Have you read it before? Have you read West Vincent, 302, section 13 before?
I believe so, yes.
And the applicant shall design the site, A, to minimize disturbances to land, site, and natural resources, and to maintain the natural hydrologic regimen, drainage patterns, and flow conditions. The applicant shall apply the procedure set forth in 302.16 for the overall site design, and for selection, location, and design of the features and BMPs to use to comply with the requirements of this chapter. So it refers to 302.16. Let's go there.
I can streamline this by, one, objecting, and two, suggesting that Mr. McKenna has already testified under oath that the plan that we are working from and is before this board is code compliant. So now to go back and read word for word certain hand-picked provisions is completely irrelevant.
Mr. Myerson, we can read the letter, and Mr. McKenna's testified that the plan complies with the letter. If you have a question that,
Complies with what letter?
with the review letter and the
It complies,
ordinance.
I'm asking him if it complies with West Vincent, and if it complies with Pennsylvania statute, because it doesn't.
Well, he
Clearly
testified,
doesn't.
he
I'm reading
testified
how
that,
it doesn't. You don't want me to read it?
I don't want you to read the letter, because we could read the
I'm not
letter. and
reading the letter, I'm reading West Vincent code.
Well, we can read the code as well.
Well, so, I want it on the record.
He's already testified on the record that the plan is code compliant. End of story.
Well, no, it's not the end of the story, it's under subject to cross-examination. You know that, and the cross-examination shows why it isn't what he says it is. Right? Yes or no?
I'm not the witness and I don't have to answer your
Please ask
questions,
him a
sir.
question, Mr. Myerson.
I'm trying
We
to.
can streamline
He
it.
objects and you sustain, and I'm not allowed to cite West Vincent code. This is strange.
Well, ask him if it complies with a particular code provision. You don't need to read each provision.
I'm not reading each, I've just read two. Going to the Pennsylvania 1978 Act 167. This is statute of the Pennsylvania. Section 2, are you familiar with this? The General Assembly finds that the inadequate management of accelerated runoff of stormwater resulting from development throughout a watershed increases flood flows and velocities, contributes to erosion and sedimentation, overtaxes the carrying capacity of streams and storm waters, greatly increases the cost of public facilities to carry and control stormwater, undermines floodplain management and flood control efforts in downstream communities, reduces groundwater recharge, and threatens public health and safety. Do you agree with that?
It's in the Pennsylvania code, yes.
What I just read, is there anything in what I just read you disagree with? And you've seen in the video runoff directly into some property, and although you've walked, you claim not to know it's my property?
Well, actually, no. I think I stated earlier that that's not adjacent to this site. So I'm very familiar with this project area,
It's-
but not
it's-
necessarily the
It's
surrounding.
downhill where the water's gonna flow, right?
No.
It's not downhill from it?
I think I testified earlier that the stormwater flows from this application are not directed to the north.
How do you show that here?
Mr. Myerson, do you want to make another point? We've been over the issue as to where the water flows from
Flows
this
downhill.
particular project.
Does water flow downhill?
We've heard that question already.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions you'd like to ask the witness?
Shall we suspend the hearing till next month?
Now, my understanding is, pardon me, I didn't get the joke.
See,
Go ahead, Mr. Myerson.
I didn't get the joke. Anybody's-
There was no
It
joke.
wasn't a joke.
Oh, somebody was laughing at something?
Please proceed.
You and the witnesses laughed, I'm sorry to share. Section 16 of Pennsylvania Code, in this letter that you read.
Is that your email again?
Yes, ma'am.
Just check.
Preservation of existing rights and remedies. The collection of any penalty under the provisions of.
Mr. Myerson, we don't, if you'd like to state a section, we can take a note for the record as to what section it is. But I think the board is familiar with the Pennsylvania Code, with the West Vincent Code, and I don't think it serves the purpose of time here tonight for you to read those provisions into the record. If you'd like
Approved
to.
a plan on the property that had not previously had storm management pursuant to Mr. Norris's own testimony. And now the first storm management is coming in, and he's trying to tell me that water doesn't flow downhill.
I think, well, I thought he was trying to tell you that
Bless you.
what they're doing, they're going to take care of. Whatever water that's going to be created from this development will be taken care of. So in other words, not adding any more water
So you're
flow
responsible
downhill.
to me for any water that comes down after this. Just, I'm telling, between you and I, it will be.
I object, that's not a question.
It's a
Sounds like
statement.
threat.
Okay. That
Please-
sounded like a
please-
threat.
Do you have any further
It's not a
questions?
threat, it's the truth.
Mr. Myerson, do you have any other questions you'd like to ask?
Do you know why there was no stormwater management program prior to your plan here for just westward distribution of downhill water?
No, I don't know.
And you're only taking care of the flow westward. You're not taking care of any flow that might go north, south, east, or west.
I'm going
North,
to,
south, or east.
I'm managing flows from this project and this application, regardless
All
of their,
flows.
from this application only.
So you're managing, are there eastbound flows from this? Is your testimony there are no eastbound flows from this?
And I would say generally speaking, on this plan, east is uphill. So
None north?
Mr. Myerson, I think the board understands from the testimony which way the water's flowing, so I don't think we need to go over that again. Is there another
Well,
point you'd like to make by asking the witness a question?
It should be from the drawings. The board should understand.
We have to
Yeah.
get it back.
And no other questions. Wait, just a minute.
Can you redirect, Mr. Jennings?
No, I learned my lesson the first time.
Okay. You're free.
At this point, that concludes the applicant's case in chief. I would ask at this time to move for the admission of applicant exhibits A1 through A11.
So moved.
Thank you. And I just would, at the end, ever so briefly, like to reserve the opportunity to provide some concluding remarks.
That would be fine, Mr. Jennings.
Thank you.
Since there's,
We did have somebody.
May I
well,
show the panel
this is
again?
his opportunity.
Okay.
We take 5.
Yeah. Take five.
okay? 5 minutes. Sure, report.
Yeah. We could prepare.
Thank you, I understand you're taking the
Oh,
time.
we can't, I think that would be a smart move. Take your time.
Yeah, so we'll go to the police report.
Yes.
Very
He's been waiting for a
patiently
while.
waiting.
Okay, I just have a page. Training is critical incident stress management. Probably pistol optics. We have emergency vehicle operation course, tactical response, summary totals, number of calls for service 168, number of crimes investigated 10, number of arrests 0, number of traffic stops 41, number of accidents investigated 7, and again, that is the monthly report.
Thank you.
Tax revenue?
And we're moving on to the bills list.
Would you like me to just jump ahead to make a motion to approve the bills list in the amount of?
Excuse me, I'd like to present my, did you have?
We're just taking a break, we're letting the pool reporter take a break.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's why we're moving ahead, try to get something done.
In the amount of $735,863.95.
I'll second that motion.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Brian.
Two short ones. One is, we've had the mower was repaired, I think. Does this bills list include payments for repair of that mower?
Do you know?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
We'll have to check the bills, so.
Okay, and the other one is, there's a bill in there for equipping the new police vehicle.
Yes.
And I believe there was some discussion earlier on whether the equipment could be moved from the vehicle that was disposed of to the new vehicle. Now, did that happen, or is this all brand new equipment?
They don't make cars the same from year to year anymore.
Okay.
And we're trying to see if we can have that equipment donated to another municipality if we could use it in their vehicle.
Okay, which kind of answers my next question is, you know, what happens to stuff that's moved? It's somehow moved on, et cetera, disposed?
We're hoping to work that out. I think the chief's working on it now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'll try and get the mower thing to you by sometime next week. You want to see the bills? What are you looking for?
Big picture of how much the bill finally came out to.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Sarah?
Aye. Thanks.
Okay, treasurer's report. Michelle?
Okay, so treasurer's report for the month ending September 30th, 2021. We have a total township ending fund balance of $13,615,571.04. In the general fund, month ending September 30th, 2021, we have an ending fund balance of $4,191,948.70. This month, West Vincent Township received $5,758 in real estate taxes, $144,387 in earned income, and $43,817 in deed transfer tax for the month of September. The total 2021 tax revenue received so far is at 91% of the annual budgeted tax revenue. So this is around 10% higher than where we were this time last year. West Vincent Township received $91,233 in pension aid and $47,409 in supplemental fireman's relief aid in the month of September. And the last of the 2021 Community Day refunds were also sent out in this month. Some expenditure notes. 407-450 data processing contracted services was for IT services and for the annual Microsoft subscriptions. Both the approved 2021 supplemental fire company contributions and the fireman's relief aid money were paid out in September. Flipping to open space. we have an ending fund balance of $2,864,438.21. And all open space activity this month was related to TDRs. Capital Project Reserve, month ending September 30th, 2021. We have an ending fund balance of $679,108.54. For Capitol Road, month ending September 30th, 2021, we have an ending fund balance of $4,629,518.31. Capitol Road Engineer expenditures for the month of September included the payments made to Mckenna Associates for services on the Buttonwood Bridge project and payments made to LTL Consultants for the engineering services on Houndstooth, Kimberton, and Art School roads, and Kimberton Road Bridge project. Capital Equipment, month ending September 30th, 2021. We have an ending fund balance of $462,219.78. The outfitting of the new 2021 police vehicle was paid in September. Liquid Fuels, month ending September 30th, 2021. We have an ending fund balance of $80,924.07. Sewer, month ending September 30th, 2021. We have an ending fund balance of $83,827.47. American Rescue Plan Act Fund, we have an ending fund balance of $309,370.61. And in escrows, month ending September 30th, we have an ending balance of $317,107.10.
Thank you very much. Oh, any questions?
Oh, yeah.
I have a question.
We're in a group. Hi,
Um,
you're hidden
Before the
behind.
witness disappears. What was that first $14 million balance for?
That's total township ending fund balance for September.
Ending fund balance, is that earned surplus?
No.
No, just ending
I
fund balance,
can't hear.
$14
Yeah.
million.
This, never mind. You can tell us later.
Okay,
They're ready to start again, but I think we ought to tell people that Barbara King Gordon's left.
yes, has left.
Because
So we won't have an audit presentation tonight, that will be at our next meeting.
So if anybody came to that, we just wanted you to know, don't wait around.
Okay, so should we go back into
If
the,
you'd like to.
Mike, before you, what's the audit presentation going to be on?
our audit? Year-end
Last
audit.
2020 financials.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara King,
Gordon.
yeah. Okay, let's go back to our hearing.
You ready to go back on the record?
Thank you.
Mr. Myerson, I think this is your opportunity to present any testimony or evidence on the part of the application.
And I think he wants to now formally present M1 and 2.
Well, we'll see. Well,
Okay.
if you want to present testimony, then perhaps you should be sworn.
No, I don't want to present testimony just yet, but perhaps I might. I would like to wonder why West Vincent Township hasn't had a water management plan in place before for that property. Now I'd like to shake it up.
This is going to be hard for you, but you just put video showing.
I'll mail it to you.
Right, so you'll have to provide it if you want to present it to the board. You'll have to provide it to both the applicant as well as the township.
Sure, I've already provided the applicant. So here, there's two provided to the applicant.
All right, so why don't we call this, what is this, Exhibit M2?
Yes,
Mr. Jennings can come around with.
so here's water coming down into my property, flowing over this deck.
Was this during an Ida?
Yeah, no, before it's happened once a year,
Once a year.
once a year. See, 5-foot waterfall
Right, and this has been happening forever.
once a year, and for about the past 5 or 10 years.
So at this point, Mr. Myerson is testifying, so I'd ask that he be sworn.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Oh, well,
I ask that you be sworn in your testimony.
He did not testify. If you want to provide testimony, then you're going to need to be sworn. If you don't want this to be under oath, then that's fine too. We just can't use it as evidence.
Okay, I swear that
Well, no,
Yes.
the court reporter has to do it.
I can face a beautiful woman. I'm sorry I'm not wearing a hat.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so this has been happening for at least the last 5 years.
Right,
Okay.
that's one. Now to show you where it goes. Same day.
Yeah, this is not,
Is this the second video, M3?
Yes. So it goes down from there.
River.
And that's the French Creek, or for
It
front
kind
of
of looks like the French Creek.
Yeah,
It's just a
all right.
little,
But it's,
it's just a little rainstorm.
no, I'm trying to ask you if the water course that's
It's going
back
into-
there, that's the river.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
And that's across your property?
Yes, and down my car, and down theirs. Whether it's Norman's or Nancy's or somebody else, it's a Norris property.
Right.
We've had a lot of rain.
No other evidence.
Anything else you'd like to present? Is that it, Mr. Myerson?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I may ask him a few questions.
Oh, wait, one more. As
Yes, sir.
testimony, through the years, through the decades, I've corresponded with Norman, asking him to take care of it, and he adamantly refuses. And now the blame is on someone else. He's the father.
May I ask Mr. Myerson just a couple of
Sure.
questions on
Go ahead, Mr.
cross-examination?
Jennings.
Thank you. Mr. Myerson, are you a professional engineer?
No, sir.
So you're not licensed as a professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
That flows, does it not?
Is that your answer to my
I
question?
think he said he wasn't.
Okay. And the videos that you just showed to the board, when were they taken?
2017.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
You have a question?
I have other videos of other years.
Mr. Jennings, is there anything you said you wanted to reserve an opportunity to make a statement to the board? Would you like to do that, or
Yeah.
shall we? Go ahead.
And then the
Yeah,
audience.
And then we'll take public comment.
Just ever so briefly, in conclusion, I want to thank the board for its patience this evening. I'll keep this brief. What we have here is a conscientious property owner. We have a project team comprised of exceptional design and engineering professionals. We have a clean review letter from the county. We have clean engineering reviews from the township's own engineer, both from a grading plan and permitting perspective as well as from a conditional use application perspective. Probably most importantly, what we have is substantial, unrebutted, incredible testimony that demonstrated compliance with all of the township's objective criteria for the grant of conditional use approval. So with that said, I would ask that the board please consider a motion, a second, and a favorable vote granting the relief sought regarding precautionary and prohibitive steep slopes pursuant to the ordinance sections identified earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. This is a time for public comment, not questions, just comments.
May I come?
Here's
Sir, well, let's take this one, person first. Could you just state your name for the record? I'm sorry, I can't.
He
Brian,
just-
this guy back here is first.
No,
Oh,
Brian,
I'm sorry.
Brian, this guy's been, for the last 45 minutes, been waiting patiently.
Go ahead, sir, if you could just state your name for the record.
Certainly. Andrew Davis, 2334 Beaver Hill Road. And I'd just like to officially state that the video that you were just shown, I actually stopped during Hurricane Ida and asked you folks if you need any help. That video is not this 8-acre parcel. That is the parcel further down the road. That is directly across from the property, but that is not the parcel that is on these plans.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Yes, Brian.
I'm gonna say there are be process questions. The plans that are being presented here, they've got a lot of conditions and things that are supposed to be done, how they're supposed to be done. These plans are going to be recorded down in Westchester in the recorder's office, is that correct?
Not entirely certain. This isn't a land development plan, so it probably won't be recorded, but it'll be in the township's records. This is a use application right now.
Well, the stormwater will, right?
Yeah, okay, so I'm not sure if this particular.
Yeah, I'm asking you about the stormwater aspects of it.
No.
And the reason I'm asking it is there's certain, it's very prescriptive of, this is the way it'll be done. And my understanding is stuff that's recorded at the recorder's office then exists and has to be followed in perpetuity, that being a long time. In some of these plans, they go and talk about, okay, you've got to use plywood here. Plywood may not be available in a certain number of years. And the other real question that kind of really got me is, there's points where if it has 1 inch of rain, you've got to do these inspections. If you have 4 inches of rain, you've got to do these other set of inspections. Good. Does that mean that the homeowner has to be there all the time or have someone inspecting it if precipitation occurs in the area? I don't know. It seems very strange.
Well, so the township has a stormwater management maintenance agreement that it requires for stormwater management facilities, and that will be recorded along with a plan that shows these improvements. So yes, that will be recorded.
So in other words, somebody has to be monitoring the precipitation, I'm going to say on the property, so they can go and take actions recorded as required by the plans.
There's a maintenance schedule associated with that agreement, correct?
Okay.
I'm sure 1 out of 1,000 will do that.
I think it's going to have some
Brian might be
unexpected consequences,
You
shall we
might
say.
be looking for a
Thank you.
job.
There you go. Okay.
Anybody else like public comment? Okay, that's it. We'll close the, Mr. Myerson, I think you presented a case. If you want to provide comment, go ahead.
I would like to respond to Mr. Davis. Yes, you did stop, and yes, I did say not now. And the reason was, I was up to past my ankles in water in the middle of Hollow Road. There was nothing you could do at the moment. I did call you twice thereafter and left messages on your answering machine, which were not responded to. I have innumerably called. The problem is clear, and to date, you have done nothing to manage this stormwater runoff, nor has the township done anything to manage it, although they are required.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Myerson. If there, Mr. Davis, if you'd like, just please be brief.
Absolutely. All I just want to say is that Hollow Road is a problem, but it's also a state road. And maybe at some point, the township could give some help trying to nudge the state to maintain the roadside swales and open up their drains. Might help out. That's it.
Okay, thank you. With that, Mr. Myerson, you would like to move your exhibits into the record M1 through 3?
Yes, and I would like to state that in response to that, the ditch that the township maintained adequately to carry the downhill water to a culvert, to a pipe under Hollow Road, to discharge to the woods behind my property, is no longer reachable because the downhill dirt has piled it so bad and so high that when you drive it back by, and it's not cut down by tomorrow, there's huge vegetation going above the ditch, and the ditch is filled up beyond capacity. Now, the state is unable to keep up with the problems, but it has been unable to clean that ditch for years, and I've made it known to my neighbors. And I haven't wanted to sue my neighbors, and I didn't want to get into an argument with them. And I personally asked them to call off this meeting tonight, and let's discuss it. And Mr. Norris said, no, there's going to be a hearing. So we've had our hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Myerson. I don't think there's any reason why you need to
No, I
respond.
don't intend to respond to him. I just wanted, for the purposes of the record, to object to each of the exhibits M1, 2, and 3, having a lack of proper foundation and an absence of relevance. In addition, I would just respectfully ask for a verbal decision tonight from the board. We were originally scheduled to and looking to proceed last month, and we provided an extension of time to the township to accommodate this hearing at this October 18th regular session. So just in light of the impending winter months and all of that, we'd like to get the project underway. So it's just a request that I wanted on the record.
We'll take it under advisement. Thank you, Mr. Jennings. With that, we'll close the record. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay. What would you like to do about the request?
I move that we accept the conditional use permit for 2286 Beaver Road.
I second it.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you very much.
And we'll have 45 days
Are there
to
any
issue a
nays?
decision.
Are there any nays?
No.
And Mr. Jennings and Mr. Norris, I don't know if you heard the planning commission comment after you left, but they said they were very well prepared. So,
Thank you so much.
I take my professionals pretty
well, yeah, Dan, you too.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the manager's report. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As has been reported a number of times, Buttonwood Bridge experienced some failures during the most recent storm and was repaired within 24 hours. The Art School Road project will be undertaken next week by the Highway Department and the contractor. And we're also monitoring the bridge on Fellowship Road closely. It's been not sinking, but the elevation's been changing about an inch or so over a period of a couple weeks. So that will need some work in the near future, probably over the winter or in the early spring. That was not on anybody's radar screen for any of the road projects. That is when it just popped up as a result of the storm. There's a meeting tomorrow with the PEMA on the process for submitting applications for funding for storm damage, and I'll be attending that meeting and hopefully have some information to provide the board. Lastly, I requested the board hold their November 1st board meeting so that I may present the 2022-24 budget. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. We skip to number 5, and go on to 6, old business, conditional use application.
I have a couple of comments, and I will get them after the treasurer's report.
Okay.
When I put them in here. Might be early. My name is John Elton, 1634 Hilltop Road. One comment is that in the last year-end audit, there was an accounts receivable of $761,000. In the report, the current treasurer's report, it's minus $94. So it's going from $761,000 down to minus $94. The auditors, they're gone, might bring that back, which might give you another $500,000 of income for the year. That's what's happened every year. The auditor's report, by the way, changed 2019 by $500,000 increase. So there's been a lot of changes. In this report also, the fund balance is increased by that year-to-year comparison in here by $1.8 million. So it in effect, I think it's broadly said, we've made $1.8 million more than we've spent in the last 12 months. There's certain...
We're on accrual too, right?
Yeah,
So I think that's part of it. The
A
accrual
lot of-
method we're using, I think, has something to do with it.
A lot of your comments would be more appropriately addressed to the auditor because a lot of them were a result of the changes from the cash basis to the modified accrual basis.
Okay. I would say further that the monthly report that you do, I think there should be more identification on the balance sheet of what the items are now. Since we went to this modified accrual, the balance sheet becomes important, and we don't know what it is.
As we stated earlier, we're operating on a cash basis during the year, and the books are converted to modified accrual.
This process, this process will take a little bit of time to get to a fully modified accrual basis on a monthly basis.
Okay. One other thing I saw was there's some significant salary increases for the month. Any thoughts on that?
Been no salary increases given to anyone since the board approved the salaries in January.
Okay, it just seemed like the month-to-month changes were.
So there were 3 payrolls in September.
Oh, okay. That works fine.
Okay. Conditional use application decision, Pinkerton?
I would like to make a motion to approve conditional use decision for 1871 Timberton Road.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Conditional use application decision for TC Energy.
I would like to make a motion to approve the conditional use decision for TC Energy Corp. Eagle Compressor Station.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Brian?
Thank you.
What does, actually, it applies to both of them, but what are the decisions on these 2 conditional uses?
To approve.
Are there conditions different than what was presented at the hearing?
No. Yes?
Well, there were no conditions that were presented at the hearing.
That's true.
So once the board approves a decision, then then it becomes a public document, and you can release it. But you have, right now, it's something that's just under discussion. But you're free to explain what the proposed conditions would be.
So on the,
I can see that.
on the first one, the conditions relate to complying with everything in their application, their plan, and our engineer's letter. And so what you saw there is what we're asking them to do.
But there's no additional conditions that were placed on it.
There is a condition in TC Energy that we discussed in the planning commission and several meetings here, is that we would like them to document the continued agricultural use of the rest of the parcel. And so that wasn't in the engineer's letter, but it was certainly in the discussion during many conversations with the TC Energy people.
Okay, I guess I'm confused a bit that we had the hearings, and tonight, with tonight's hearing, we had a decision right away. These 2, we had a decision, and now we have this, I'm going to say at least a month's delay until we get this. Why does it take a month in some cases and not in others?
Well,
It's,
If it's a more simplistic application, then the board can grant it at the conclusion of the hearing, but if there's
if there's still questions that the board has or things they want to go over before rendering a decision, then they have the right to do the decision on the next meeting.
and we got a transcript of the TC Energy, so that we could review what we said, what they said. So we had a chance to, it wasn't a deliberation huddled in the corner, but it was a chance to review what it said and then review this document, and everything matches up.
Same thing with Kimberton. I don't know why we didn't do it the first time, but.
Well, I think because we've gotten smarter. We're
okay.
trying to do a lot of things.
Okay, thank you for the, illumination on, the process that's going, because, you had this hearing, and then we've got a month that nothing happens, and then we've got an answer,
Decision.
and we have a vote, but we don't have any discussions. It's like, okay, now how did that come and
What
happen?
happened, right, in
Yeah.
between.
Well, the board could do that as part of its judicial function. I mean, you don't have to do that.
No, I know we don't have to, but I mean, we should have discussion if there's any changes between the hearing and our decision. The public should know what those discussions were.
And that's kind of, the direction I'm going of,
Right.
okay, how did we get here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, new business, resolution 21-2021.
We approved TC Energy and we asked a question afterward. Is that right, Kathy?
I don't
Yeah.
think we did.
Okay, then all in favor, Mike?
Yeah,
Aye.
so, yeah, aye.
Okay. I think are we down to, okay, I think this is what these three guys sitting there are for. The room is bare, so eventually thinning out. I would like to make a motion to approve resolution 21, 2021, to accept the deeds of dedication at 552 Blackbird Road. 352, yeah, I knew that my dyslexia was operating. 352 Blackbird Road. How you doing, Randy?
Second.
I'm happy now.
Any comments, questions? Yes, Brian?
We can count on Brian.
What did the deeds of dedication say?
It says, as we often do in subdivisions, is that this road had a smaller public right-of-way, and because we can, during subdivisions, expand it, we've gone to 25-foot setback things.
So we had a 32-foot right-of-way, and now it's got a 50-foot right-of-way, so.
So it has to be, yeah.
Yeah, 25 feet onto the property is now right-of-way, so there's an additional 10 feet, let's say.
On two of the three parcels.
Right, and that's being granted to the township by deed of right-of-way. So if the township ever needs to do anything in.
It doesn't change the road now, but it gives the township potential access in the future. Except this is those three parcels in a row, you know. The one in the middle it's not changed.
So in other words, unless there's a deed of dedication, the road remains, I think, by the very old state law of 32 foot wide?
That's correct. It's a general road law, 32 feet wide.
Okay.
And there have been some cases where neighbors have objected. There was a change on St. Matthew's Road, but widening the right-of-way from the 16 to 25 would have been putting a historic wall in the road. So I wasn't one of we then, but I'm pretty sure we did not do that at the time because we didn't want to infringe on that historic wall.
Okay. Is there some reason why the agenda didn't provide some additional description as to what was going on?
No, just trying to keep it from the brain.
Well, that's fine, except that the Pennsylvania state law just recently changed, where you're supposed to be providing more additional information. So, are we going to go and comply with the law in the future?
I would hope so.
The township this is sufficient information to describe the resolution and what the resolution encompasses. So you don't have to describe every word of every item on the agenda. You simply need to state what the item is that's on the agenda. I think that this.
But
Why should anyone be interested in it if you have no idea what the deed of dedication, what the attributes
what it
are?
actually means, right?
You're stumbling into, at least in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, that, the thing of like executive sessions, well, we did real estate or we did personnel. Okay, but according to the Reading Eagle case, you're supposed to provide a little bit more additional information. And we haven't done this. I happen to, in looking for some other stuff, looked at how Chester County addresses agendas, and they provide significant amounts of information of what's going on and what is, going to lead up to the decisions that occur. So that's why I'm raising this, and basically I am going and talking about the recent Senate Bill 554 of 2021.
And did you hear John Granger say he will work on that?
Okay.
Thank you.
I did not hear that, but thank you,
I
Sarah.
wanted to make sure he agreed to it about a paragraph or two ago.
Okay, thank you.
very much, gentlemen.
Next, we have the approval of the Houndstooth Lane final payment.
Oh, I will do this one too, Bernie, so I can get used to spending the money. I will make a motion to approve the Houndstooth Lane final payment to Able Recon LLC in the amount of $311,432.98.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this payment is $15,189 less than the contracted price.
Okay, great, excellent.
Thank you.
Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
How come your camera is quit?
Next, we,
I have a motion to accept a snow removal bid from Oz Properties in the amount of $93,625. I'm working on my reading of numbers.
I'll second the motion.
is that the only bid we got this year?
Apparently, it's the only one that's in our packet.
That's for a 3-year?
I think it's one with two options.
Two additional options.
1 year with 2 additional options. That would be the greatest price of spread over 3 years if we needed him for a substantial period of time.
Okay.
So, it's a
Any
ton of,
comments, questions? Yes, Brian.
I want to make sure that I'm correct. This was voted on to be advertised at the last meeting, correct?
I believe so. We did, at a recent meeting.
yes, I knew it was the last meeting.
So, I'm going to say the first opportunity to go and look at this was after this, so I want to make sure that, I didn't miss it or something else, is I finally had an opportunity to look at it, and some questions came up to me that did make sense. John, you had mentioned that we had changed the bid a bit to go and have extended, maybe try to get some more bidders that way. And one of the things that really got my attention is that I think, yes, this is in section C, specifications. Who developed that list of specifications?
I have no idea what happened before. It was developed before I got here. The only thing I changed was the terms of the contract.
Okay. And either I didn't look at it in earlier years or
It
something.
hasn't been changed in a substantial period of time.
Okay, because here's the thing that came to me. The contractor must respond to the township's request for snow removal services and be on site within 2 hours of request. Okay, that means you've got to have somebody that's really close, because you're going to call them, they've got to call their people, they've got to get to their equipment yard, and they've got to get their equipment to the township, all within 2 hours. And the other part of that is, do snowstorms really arrive and be that heavy with no warning that you don't know more than 24 or 2 hours in advance?
I'm sure we would call them prior to the snow actually happening to let them know that we may need them.
Yes, it's been my, it hasn't snowed since I've been here, I don't think. So.
Keep him around, keep him around.
Typically, what happens is the highway department will contact the contractor and say, we expect snow, expect it this time frame.
Yep.
And we expect you to be here at that time frame.
Yep.
So they get notice and they're here at that time. So it's, now sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, sometimes it snows early, sometimes it snows late, but that's the game. You're prepared, and that's really what you're prepared for.
But
there is communication between the township and the contractor saying, be here at this time.
But is 2 hours in the contract a reasonable request?
Yeah, I haven't seen I have not seen in my career anything much different than that. You typically, I have seen where contractors, you're here, be here at 10 o'clock at night, they're here at 9. They're here at 9. They're here early. And because the township called the guy and it's gonna storm, be here at this time, and the guys are here.
And you just, I'm gonna say you made my point.
Right.
Is you didn't call them 2 hours before that.
No.
You called them the day, night before, etc.
You call them as soon as you make a decision you're gonna need somebody, you call
whether it's the day before, hour before, they have to be there. The response time is 2 hours.
But your requirement in the contract that you've got to go and have a 2-hour response time
Yes.
means that you can't have somebody that's very far away potentially go and bid on it.
That can happen, yes.
Not more
You're
than
not
an
gonna-
hour away, I mean.
You're not gonna get somebody from Lancaster County to bid on a job, no.
No, you might get somebody, I'm gonna say from Reading, from Pottstown,
That could happen.
you know, other parts of the county. I'm looking at this and saying that, there's requirements in here, and I can see how they go into limit you, and I think we need to go and look at this thing from a more expansive view. If we're gonna try to really get contractors, is look at how the things that prevent or reduce the chances of a contractor, bidding,
You're
on
not
the
making,
job.
you can't be here, right, I understand. Well, we'll take a look at it for the next contract.
Well, the only way to get people to bid on it, or more people to bid, is give them guarantees.
Yes.
X amount of money
Yes.
each year, regardless if we're going or not.
A minimum, give them a minimum, and I'll tell you, I have not worked on a community that's had that.
Also, Brian, John decided to do this 1 year with 2 one-year options as a hope to incentivize more bidders. Because if they saw it wasn't just a one-off, if they come in and perform, then they've got the chance of having a multi-year contract. That didn't attract any more bidders.
I understand. It's going to be a multitude of factors to try to actually have more people bid on this. If I remember right, even the Oz property people we found them and we talked to them quite a number of years
You gotta
ago.
go out and reach out to people there. You're not, we're competing with shopping centers, land developments, and that's a tough competition here.
That's guaranteed work.
Yeah.
We're not guaranteeing anything.
I understand it. I think, is it Weatherstone? It deals with their own snow removal. We don't do that.
No, they're part of it. The only one that I believe is private is Chester Springs.
Okay.
While the streets in Weatherstone are public streets.
I think there's.
The contractor may do them, but they are public streets.
Well, I think there was somebody that, I was talking to, they did the thing just that you said, they had the minimum there, and there's some years it burns them, and other years it doesn't, and it's the way it is. I understand it, I won't go and argue with that at all. I'm gonna go and hit for 2 more things. It says that you have the potential to go and ask for, 3 references. I'm gonna go and say they are. Have we ever asked for the 3 references?
I don't believe so. This company's worked for the township in the past, and
Okay.
the township's been happy.
On the state form, item number 6, it says that the contractor shall provide adequate insurance coverage in the form of property damage and bodily injury insurance. Then in the township section, C, item number 13, it says the selected contractor will be required to maintain insurance coverage in general conformance with the following. And again, I'm not an attorney, but I think isn't there a difference in interpretation of when the statement is shall, the statement is will, and when it comes to insurance?
I'm not an attorney, I'll talk to the guy down here that did.
What's the question?
Okay.
If it says shall, if it says if,
On
it's up to the board to draft the bid as they see fit.
We're talking about insurance, it's sticking that, and they're using the state form. And the state form reads that the contractor shall provide adequate insurance coverage in the form of property damage and bodily injury insurance. And then the township, when they phrase it and they're describing the amounts of insurance they want, it says the selected contractor will be required to maintain insurance coverage in general conformance with the following, and then it lists them. Now, is that, I'm gonna say, does it open the township up to some potential for litigation, whether it's will or shall?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
I think that those are, I prefer shall, but I think it's relatively interchangeable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, last one.
I will make a motion to approve the Chester County Planning Commission agreement for professional planning services to update West Vincent Township's natural resources protection standards for the zoning and subdivision and land development ordinances.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, and just for information, they contacted us and said, we're doing some services to municipalities, would you like some? And we said, what's it gonna cost? And they said nothing, and we said yes.
Okay, so they're gonna make recommendations?
Yes,
Okay, and we'll vote whether we want them or not?
right, and,
Okay.
and if we like where they're going, they might even help us draft the revisions to the ordinances, but we're not paying for them, and they are expert planners.
Okay, Brian, yes?
Sarah, since you seem to be the one who knows everything on this one, are there other townships that are doing the same thing for?
I'm sure this is but we're not tied into anybody else on this, but.
I understand.
I think probably a half a dozen each year, they're sort of working their way through it. Were you there when Brian O'Leary spoke to us? Were you here?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, well, because he mentioned that they were doing that kind of outreach, but I didn't ask. him.
Okay, so they're basically working through their way through the townships, through the entire county.
Wouldn't be at all surprised.
Okay, thank you.
There would be people to turn them down, but not us.
Huh?
We like free.
Well, we like free, but it's big government pushing down on small. That's not a good thing. Actually, a bad thing, because when it is free, you tend to accept it.
I am good.
Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, Tom had a question just as you.
There's no strings that come with this at all?
No, but the problem is they present something to you and then you have the,
Well, it'll go.
you feel like you should accept it, I guess.
Well, that's what I'm
And it
saying.
makes it easy to accept somebody else's work, and that's where the problem comes in.
It will go to the planning commission for review as well.
Yeah, I
So
know.
it's not-
It still has a chance,
And there'll be lots of opportunity for.
and we
the
can
public
change
to
it,
weigh in.
and we can change it, right?
Right. We have some people here who look like
Okay,
it's part of the public
so
comment.
now we're into public comment.
You said aye to that, right, before.
Any questions, comments from the audience? Seeing none, do we have
Motion to adjourn.
Wheeler, did you want
two? Are you going to say yes?
I'm
You going to say second?
going to say second, but I'm watching Wheeler, who's, was thinking whether he was going to say something or not.
John's already leaving.
Sarah, I hear my name, but I don't have the slightest idea what you're talking about.
I said we're at public comment. Did you want to make any comments?
I would have made that clear if I.
Okay, good.
Thank
Yes. Yes, second to third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, hi, everybody, thank you.
I know.